She was 13. She wanted to give the ring back. He wouldn't take it. 3 weeks later, she was identified through her orthodontic records because no other method was possible. The order was placed under a name that does not exist: a body bag, 2 chainsaws, a blue inflatable pool, a burn cage marketed for farm use, all of it delivered to the same Hollywood Hills address. Investigators would later describe the purchase history as one of the most documented evidence trails of premeditation they had encountered. On the night of April 24, 2025, a crowd packed a record release party in Los Angeles. The artist performed. People celebrated. Back near his home, parked around the corner on a quiet Hollywood Hills street, sat a Tesla Model X. Inside the front trunk, a 14-year-old girl in 2 bags. She had been there since the night before. Nobody was looking for her. David Anthony Burke was born on March 28, 2005, in New York City. He grew up in Houston, Texas, the son of a religious family, raised partly in church choir, mostly homeschooled. By his own account, music was never part of his plan. Then came Fortnite. At 16, Burke was streaming gameplay on his computer and needed background music for his montage videos that wouldn't trigger copyright removal. He downloaded a mobile recording app called BandLab, taught himself to write beats, and recorded his first song on his iPhone in under an hour. He uploaded it. His friends started using it in their own videos. Then strangers did. He kept making songs. In July 2022, when he was 17, he released a track called Romantic Homicide. He wrote it on his phone. It took 30 minutes. Within months, it had gone viral on TikTok. It charted. It earned multi-platinum certification. A teenager sitting in Houston making music on a phone had accidentally launched a music career, and Interscope Records, one of the most powerful labels in the industry, came calling. By 2024, Burke, now performing under the stage name D4VD, had millions of followers across platforms. He collaborated with major artists. He performed at festivals. He was, by every visible measure, a rising star whose trajectory seemed to have no ceiling. In April 2025, he performed at Coachella. He attempted a backflip on stage, fell, laughed it off, and the crowd cheered. 5 days later, his debut studio album, Withered, was released. It debuted at number 13 on the Billboard 200. That same week, according to prosecutors, he was ordering a shovel on the Postmates app. The contrast between those two facts is where this story begins. Celeste Abigail Rivas Hernandez was born on September 7, 2010, in Lake Elsinore, California, a small city in Riverside County, roughly 80 miles southeast of Los Angeles. Her parents had immigrated from El Salvador. She had 2 older siblings. She attended Lakeland Village School. Her family described her as a girl who loved to sing, loved to dance, and spent most Friday evenings watching movies at home with the people she loved. She was, by every account, a normal kid. In January 2022, when Celeste was 11 years old, she encountered David Burke online. Prosecutors have not released the precise details of how that first contact was made, but what they have documented is what followed. Over the course of the next 2 years, the relationship between an 11-year-old girl in Riverside County and a rising music star deepened, and according to prosecutors, it deepened in ways that were deliberately concealed from everyone around her. Celeste's parents noticed something was off early. In February 2024, when Celeste was 13, her mother reported her missing from their Lake Elsinore home. Riverside County Sheriff's deputies traced a phone number from Celeste's records back to Burke. They called him. Burke told deputies he had spoken with Celeste, but that he had only met her once in November 2023 and that he did not know she was a minor. Deputies then went to his home in West Hollywood and told him directly Celeste was 13 years old. She was a runaway. Burke told deputies he did not know where she was. 2 days later, Celeste was back home in Lake Elsinore. Her parents reported her missing again in March 2024 and again in April 2024. Each time she came back. Each time, the thread connecting her to Burke had not been cut. It had simply gone further underground. According to court filings, the two had matching tattoos on their right index fingers, the word shh. Celeste had Burke's name, David, tattooed on her left ring finger. She wore an engagement ring. She believed, prosecutors allege, that they would be married when she turned 18. She was 13 when she believed this, and while that belief was taking shape, the man she trusted was traveling internationally, performing for tens of thousands of fans, building a public career, and according to the prosecution's evidence, building something else entirely in private. By the end of 2024, the relationship between Celeste and Burke had formally ended. They broke up in November of that year, but according to prosecutors, the contact never stopped. Text messages continued. Prosecutors allege the physical relationship continued as well. In March 2025, Celeste sent Burke a message. The prosecution has made it part of the court record. In it, she told him that she wanted more from her life than what she was getting from him. She was 14 years old, and she was trying to find a way out of something that had consumed 3 years of her childhood. But leaving was not as simple as sending a message. The relationship that had begun when she was 11 had been carefully constructed over years. Burke had, according to prosecutors, paid a classmate $1,000 to deliver a secret cell phone to Celeste at her middle school after her parents tried to end the contact. The phone created a direct, hidden line, one that her family could not see and could not monitor. By April 2025, that line was still open. On April 22, 2025, 2 days before Burke's debut album was scheduled to drop, Celeste and Burke had what prosecutors describe as a lengthy argument over text. Celeste had learned or suspected that Burke was involved with other women while having led her to believe they had a future together. She was furious, she was hurt, and according to prosecutors, she made a threat. She told Burke she would expose their relationship publicly. She would tell the world what he had done. She would, in her words, end his career and destroy his life. She was a 14-year-old girl trying to use the only leverage she had. Burke responded by text. The messages were measured, according to prosecutors. Nothing in them would have signaled what came next. The following day, April 23, 2025, Burke sent an Uber to Lake Elsinore to pick Celeste up from her home. She got in. The driver brought her north toward Los Angeles. Court records show the vehicle arrived at Burke's Hollywood Hills rental home, a property on Doheny Place, at approximately 10:10 p.m. The prosecution's brief states what happened next with blunt, clinical language. Very soon after her arrival, according to prosecutors, Burke stabbed Celeste Rivas Hernandez multiple times. He stood by while she bled out. At no point did he call 911. At no point did he seek medical help. At 10:30 p.m., approximately 20 minutes after she arrived, Burke texted Celeste's phone asking where she was. Prosecutors believe this was not confusion. They believe it was calculation. At 11:30 p.m. on the night of April 23, 2025, Burke left his Hollywood Hills home. He drove to Santa Barbara County. Specifically, prosecutors allege, to an isolated area off State Route 154 near Lake Cachuma, where he disposed of Celeste's property. Her passport card was found in that same area 8 months later, in January 2026, by a Caltrans road worker during routine maintenance. Burke returned home before sunrise. The next morning, April 24, 2025, he gave a radio interview about his album. That evening, he hosted the record release party for Withered. The album dropped on April 25th. In the days that followed, Burke ordered a shovel from Home Depot. It was delivered to his address via Postmates on April 24th. He never used it, or at least no evidence of its use has surfaced publicly. On May 1st, 2 chainsaws arrived from Amazon. On May 5th, 3 more items arrived: a body bag, heavy-duty laundry bags, and a blue inflatable kiddie pool. All 4 orders were placed under the same name, Victoria Mendez, a person who, according to investigators, does not exist. The deliveries were made to Burke's address on Doheny Place. On July 7th, a final item arrived at the same address under the same alias: a burn cage, a perforated steel incinerator marketed for agricultural use, capable of reaching temperatures of 1,600 degrees Fahrenheit. None of these items were hidden from public view. The burn cage arrived in its original box and, according to a private investigator who studied footage from the property, remained visible in the background of live streams Burke filmed at the home. Friends came and went through the property. Social gatherings happened. The box sat there, addressed to a person who does not exist, in a mansion with no farm. Now here is what the prosecution says those items were actually used for. According to court filings and forensic evidence, Celeste's body was placed into the blue inflatable pool inside the basement garage of the Doheny Place property. Prosecutors allege Burke used the chainsaws to dismember her remains inside that pool. When detectives later searched the garage, they collected biological samples from multiple surfaces. DNA testing confirmed those samples matched Celeste's unique genetic profile. The Trace Analysis Unit of LAPD's Forensic Science Division went further. They found fragments of blue plastic material consistent with the inflatable pool lodged inside the cuts on Celeste's body. The physical evidence connected the pool to the process, the pool to the wounds to the garage to Burke. The burn cage was never assembled. It remained in its box throughout unused. According to investigators, the constant presence of other people moving through the upper levels of the house during the weeks following Celeste's death likely made its use impossible. So Burke made a different choice. He placed what remained of Celeste Rivas Hernandez into 2 bags, her head and torso in a cadaver bag, her severed limbs in a second bag, and loaded them into the front trunk of his Tesla Model X. And then he left them there, for weeks, possibly months. During that time, according to prosecutors, people noticed a strong smell around the property and around the vehicle. Burke gave explanations. He kept moving. On May 8th and again on May 31st, he returned to the area near Lake Cachuma in Santa Barbara County, the same isolated site where Celeste's passport would later be found. He was, by all external appearances, preparing for a world tour. July 29th, 2025. Surveillance footage captured David Burke driving his Tesla Model X for the last time. He parked it on Bluebird Avenue, a residential street approximately 400 feet from his Doheny Place rental property, and walked away. That evening, he boarded a tour bus. The Withered World Tour had officially begun. His first show was in Del Mar, California. Then, the tour moved north and east, city after city, venue after venue. On August 27th, a parking enforcement officer in the Hollywood Hills marked the tires on a Tesla that had not moved in weeks. On September 3rd, the vehicle received a citation for violating the 72-hour parking ordinance. 2 days later, it was towed to a Hollywood impound yard. The car sat in that yard for 3 days. On September 8th, 2025, a worker at the tow yard noticed a smell coming from one of the vehicles. He called the Los Angeles Police Department. Officers responded, obtained a warrant, and opened the front trunk of a 2023 Tesla Model X, registered to David Anthony Burke. Inside, they found a cadaver bag. They partially unzipped it. Inside was a decomposed head and torso. A second black bag beneath the first contained additional remains. The Los Angeles County Medical Examiner later determined that the arms and legs had been severed from the body. On September 8, 2025, David Burke performed at the Fillmore in Minneapolis as part of his Withered Tour. He was on stage when LAPD opened that trunk. On September 16, 2025, the remains were officially identified. The medical examiner used dental records, specifically orthodontic imaging, to make the match. The body in the trunk was Celeste Rivas Hernandez. She had been reported missing by her family in April 2025. She was identified on September 16, 2025, 1 day after what would have been her 15th birthday. The medical examiner ruled the cause of death as multiple penetrating wounds. The manner of death, homicide. On September 17, 2025, LAPD executed a search warrant at the Doheny Place property. Detectives recovered evidence from the garage, consistent with what the prosecution would later describe in filings: blood samples, DNA confirmation, the physical evidence that placed Celeste in that space. They also seized electronic materials, including a computer, from the residence. What those devices contained has not been fully disclosed publicly, but in a subsequent court hearing, Deputy District Attorney Beth Silverman told the judge that a significant quantity of child sexual abuse material was discovered on an iPhone associated with Burke. On September 19th, the Withered World Tour was suspended. Interscope Records quietly dropped Burke. Collaborators began removing their work from streaming platforms. Kali Uchis pulled a joint single and stated publicly that Burke was not her friend. Laufey pulled a separate track. Fortnite, the very platform where Burke's music career had started, issued refunds to players who had purchased in-game items featuring his songs. By November 2025, as Burke continued to maintain through representatives that he was cooperating with investigators, LAPD sources told NBC4 that he was, in fact, not cooperating. Investigators also shared a detail they had not yet made public. They believed Burke likely had help. that someone else may have been involved in what happened after April 23rd. 3 separate grand juries were convened to examine the evidence. Burke's parents, Colleen and David Burke, were subpoenaed to testify before one of them in January 2026. They were based in Texas. They challenged the subpoenas through the Texas court system. A Texas appeals court denied their challenge in February 2026 and ordered them to comply. On December 9, 2025, the medical examiner formally ruled Celeste's death a homicide. On January 17, 2026, a Caltrans worker performing routine maintenance off State Route 154 in Santa Barbara County found a small laminated card on the ground near the highway. It was Celeste Rivas Hernandez's passport card. The location matched, according to prosecutors, the isolated site that Burke had visited the night of April 23rd, the night Celeste died, and again on May 8th and May 31st. By early 2026, the investigation had been running for 5 months. 3 grand juries had reviewed the evidence. Forensic results were back. Court documents unsealed in February confirmed that Burke was the primary target. On April 16, 2026, nearly 1 year after Celeste Rivas Hernandez was last seen alive, Los Angeles police arrested David Anthony Burke at a location in Hollywood. He was 21 years old. He was booked without bail. On April 20, 2026, he was formally arraigned at the Clara Shortridge Falls Criminal Justice Center in Los Angeles. Photographs from the arraignment showed him in an orange jail uniform, seated behind his defense attorney. The charges filed by the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office were extensive. First-degree murder, with special circumstances. 3 separate special circumstance allegations accompanied the murder charge. Lying in wait, because prosecutors allege Burke lured Celeste to his home under false pretenses, knowing what he intended to do. Murder for financial gain, because his motive, according to the prosecution, was to protect the career her disclosure would have ended. And murder of a witness because Celeste was, at the time of her death, a witness to years of alleged criminal conduct against her. Those special circumstances matter. Under California law, they make Burke eligible for the death penalty. The district attorney's office has not yet announced whether it will seek that sentence. Burke was also charged with continuous sexual abuse of a child under the age of 14, a charge covering the period from November 2023, when Celeste was 13 and Burke was 18, through the time of her death, and unlawful mutilation of human remains. Burke entered a plea of not guilty on all counts. His defense attorneys released a statement. The actual evidence in this case will show that David Burke did not murder Celeste Rivas Hernandez, and he was not the cause of her death. We will vigorously defend David's innocence. A preliminary hearing, where a judge will determine whether enough evidence exists to send the case to trial, is currently scheduled for late June 2026. Set aside the charges for a moment. Set aside the legal language. Look only at what the physical and digital record shows. A 14-year-old girl was picked up by an Uber ordered to her home and brought to a musician's house. She arrived at 10:10 p.m. 20 minutes later, the man who paid for that Uber texted her phone asking where she was. She never replied. No one ever heard from her again. Her passport card turned up months later at an isolated highway site that the same man visited the night she disappeared and returned to twice more in the following weeks. Items ordered under a fictitious name arrived at his address: a body bag, chainsaws, a pool. Fragments of that pool were found embedded in the wounds on her body. Her blood was confirmed in his garage. Her remains spent weeks, possibly months, sealed inside his car while he performed on a national tour. When the smell became noticeable, he told people around him it was something else. He texted her phone after she was dead. He traveled to Santa Barbara County to dispose of her belongings the same night she was killed. He came home in time for a radio interview. His debut album had a song on it called Romantic Homicide. The Amazon receipt, the DNA match, the passport on a highway, the text sent to a phone belonging to a girl who is already gone. The prosecution's theory is not built on one piece of evidence. It is built on a convergence of evidence so layered and so precise that dismantling any single element leaves the rest intact. The defense has said the actual evidence will tell a different story. That determination and the full weight of what happened to Celeste Rivas Hernandez will now fall to a California court. Celeste's family released a brief statement through their attorney after the charges were filed. They described her as a beautiful, strong girl. They said she deserved justice. They said they would not be making further public statements. Her community in Lake Elsinore held a vigil for her on September 21st, 2025. Photographs, handwritten notes, and flowers were left at a memorial site. People who knew her said the same thing over and over. She deserved better. She was 11 years old when this started. She was 14 when it ended. She was still wearing braces when she was killed. She was identified by the records her orthodontist kept. The man charged with her murder is currently held without bail in Los Angeles County Jail. The preliminary hearing is scheduled. The case is not over. If you want to follow every update in this case as it moves toward trial, the grand jury findings, the forensic testimony, and what the defense's evidence actually shows, subscribe now. Every development in this case has shifted what we thought we knew. And in the comment section, when investigators say they believe Burke had help, and when you look at what the evidence actually required, the Santa Barbara trips, the car, the purchases, what do you think that means for where this case goes next? Leave your thoughts below.